Hi, this is Mike Schmitz, and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at several utilities that can give your productivity on your Mac a boost. Most of these applications aren't big enough to warrant their own show, so we've decided to combine them into one show for people who are looking to make their workflows on their Mac just a little bit more efficient. We'll show you some workflow examples of how you can use these utilities and explain how to use them to make working on your Mac a little bit easier. While not every app covered on this video will be a great fit for your workflow, chances are that some of these will be a good fit for any productivity nerd. We'll be covering 12 of our favorite productivity utilities, including NVAlt, PopClip, Napkin, Tapes, DropZone, Moom, Flux, Vitamin R, Bumper, Shush, Desktop Curtain, and Amphetamine. Most of these apps are inexpensive, less than $10, or they're completely free, although a couple of them are very powerful applications in their own right, and they are a little bit more pricey. But regardless of your app budget, there's something here for just about everyone. Let's get started.